Leigh Ann Hester grew up in a small town in Kentucky, where the air smelled like cut grass and diesel fuel, where Friday nights belonged to football, and where nobody expected much from the quiet girl who worked at a shoe store after school. She was not the kind of girl people talked about. She was not the loudest in the room. She did not walk into spaces and demand attention. She simply showed up, did the work, and went home. When she joined the Kentucky National Guard at 19, her recruiter told her she had good instincts. Her mother told her to be careful. Her father said nothing, which meant he was proud. She trained, she qualified, she learned how to handle a weapon the way some people learn how to drive, steadily, without drama, until it became something her hands understood without her mind having to explain it. At a qualification range during a training exercise, she stood in line with the other soldiers, waiting her turn. The range officer, a man who had decided what kind of soldier she was before she ever raised her weapon, leaned toward the soldier next to him. He did not whisper. "She'll miss," he said. She heard it. She did not look at him. She looked downrange, adjusted her grip, and fired. She did not miss. She qualified. She qualified better than he did. He said nothing after that, and she never brought it up, and life moved forward the way it always does, without apology, without ceremony, without anyone admitting what had just happened. She filed that moment somewhere quiet inside herself, not with bitterness, not with rage. She filed it the way a person files a receipt, as evidence, as something that might matter later. In 2004, her unit was deployed to Iraq. She was 23 years old. Said, "The war in Iraq in 2004 was not the war anyone had planned for. It was not clean, it was not predictable. It moved through cities and roads and market squares in ways that no map could fully explain, and the soldiers who served there learned very quickly that the thing that kept you alive was not always the thing they had taught you in training. What kept you alive was paying attention. It was noticing the shape of a shadow that did not belong. It was feeling the temperature of a situation drop 2 degrees before you could name why. It was trusting your instincts when your instincts told you something was wrong, even when everything visible told you it was fine." Sergeant First Class Leigh Ann Hester learned all of this. She learned it the way soldiers learn things in a real war, not in a classroom, not on a range, but in the long, grinding daily work of staying alert while everything around you was designed to make you lower your guard. She was a military police sergeant. Her unit was called Raven 42, 11 soldiers, led by Staff Sergeant Timothy 9, a quiet, capable man who believed in the people under his command, and who had a talent for staying calm in moments that made other people fall apart. Their job was convoy security. They escorted supply convoys through roads in southern Iraq, keeping their eyes open, watching for threats, holding the perimeter so that the trucks could move and the supplies could reach the people who needed them. It was not glamorous work. It was long hours and dust and heat, and the particular kind of exhaustion that comes not from physical effort, but from sustained attention, from keeping your mind sharp hour after hour when nothing is happening but something might. Hester was good at it. Fail. March 20th, 2005 was a Sunday. A convoy of 30 Iraqi cargo trucks was moving south of Salman Pak, carrying supplies through a stretch of road that had been used before, that appeared routine, that looked exactly like every other road they had traveled on every other day. Raven 42 was the security element. Their job was to stay on the perimeter, observe, and respond if something went wrong. At approximately 10:30 in the morning, something went wrong. The insurgents were already in position. 40 fighters, armed with rocket-propelled grenades and machine guns, positioned along a ditch line that ran parallel to the road, a 40-meter stretch of prepared ground that had been chosen carefully, that gave them cover and angle, that allowed them to hit the convoy from close range, with the convoy having nowhere to go. The attack began all at once. The sound of a well-prepared ambush is different from ordinary gunfire. It does not begin gradually. It does not give you a moment to process what is happening. 1 second there is silence, or something close to it, and the next second, the world is entirely made of noise, of incoming fire and screaming engines, and the particular sharp percussion of RPGs going off too close to anything you care about. The cargo trucks were hit almost immediately. Drivers were trying to stop, trying to move, trying to find cover on a road that offered none. The convoy, which had been moving in a straight line, was now a broken, scattered thing, each truck an island of confusion. This was exactly what the insurgents had planned. What they had not planned was Hester. "Sir." The response she made in the next few seconds was not something she had rehearsed. It was not something anyone had specifically told her to do. It was the product of everything she had learned, the training, the months in country, the long hours of paying attention, colliding with a moment that demanded everything at once. She moved toward the ditch. Not away, not to cover, toward the ditch, where 40 armed men were firing at the convoy she was supposed to protect. This is the part that is hardest to explain to someone who has never been in that situation, because every instinct a human body has, every signal the nervous system sends in a moment of extreme danger, says, move away from the source of the threat. Get behind something. Get low, get small. She went the other way. She cut the angle, found a firing position on the trench line, and engaged. The first shot did something that no tactical manual fully captures. It did not end the ambush. 40 fighters do not collapse from a single round. But it changed the shape of the engagement in a way that mattered enormously. Until that moment, the insurgents had believed they controlled this fight. They had chosen the ground, chosen the timing, chosen the angle of attack. They had 40 men in prepared positions against 11 soldiers and 30 confused truck drivers. The first shot took that certainty away from them. It said, "You did not account for this." And then she moved again. Staff Sergeant Neen was right behind her. Specialist Jason Mike flanked the other side of the trench. What the three of them did next, along with the other soldiers of Raven 42, who were engaging from their vehicles and pushing the perimeter, was methodical in the way that only trained soldiers can be methodical when the world is falling apart around them. They cleared the trench line in segments. They moved down it, engaging as they went, using cover, communicating, not stopping. Clearing a trench line means exactly what it sounds like. It means moving down a ditch that contains people who are actively trying to end you, and making sure that when you come out the other end, the threat is gone. It takes a particular kind of person to do that. Not a fearless person. There is no such thing as a fearless person in a firefight. It takes someone who can feel the fear and move anyway. Someone whose training is so deep in the muscle and bone that it runs even when the conscious mind is white with adrenaline. Hester was that person. She fired her M4 rifle until the magazine ran empty. She did not stop to think about this. She picked up an AK-47 from the ground, a weapon she had never personally carried, a weapon that worked differently from her own, and she kept firing. She stayed in the ditch. She kept moving. The engagement lasted 25 minutes from the first shot to the last. In those 25 minutes, 27 enemy fighters were neutralized. 3 were captured. The convoy's trucks, the drivers who had been pinned in the road, the supply lines that fed people who needed feeding, all of it survived. Leigh Ann Hester personally engaged 23 enemy combatants. 3 of those engagements were confirmed. She was 23 years old, the same age as the number of men she had engaged. She would think about that number later, in quieter moments, in ways she did not always share. After the shooting stopped, after the road went quiet and the dust settled and the work of accounting began, who was hurt, what was destroyed, what needed to happen next, the soldiers of Raven 42 did what soldiers do. They checked on each other. They secured the area. They filed the reports. Nobody made a speech. Nobody stood in the road and talked about what had just happened in large, significant language. That is not how soldiers process things. They process things by continuing to function, by moving to the next task, by not letting the weight of what they have just done sit on top of them until there is a safe place to put it down. Hester helped load the wounded. She gave her account to the debriefers with the same measured calm she had used on the range in Kentucky the day the officer had told the soldier next to him that she would miss. She was precise. She was accurate. She left nothing out and added nothing extra. She did not cry until she was alone. She said that herself, later, in an interview. She said she held it together through all of it, and then went somewhere private and let it out, and then she went back to work. That is a particular kind of strength. Not the kind that appears in stories about war, the kind that does not photograph well, the kind that looks, from the outside, like nothing at all. 1. On June 16, 2005, in a ceremony at Camp Liberty in Iraq, Sergeant Leigh Ann Hester received the Silver Star. It is the third highest military decoration for valor in the United States Armed Forces. It is given for gallantry in action against an enemy of the United States. It carries the word valor on its citation, and the word distinguished, and the phrase conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity, language that was written for moments exactly like the one on the road south of Salman Pak. She was the first woman since World War II to receive it for direct combat action. Since World War II, that gap, 60 years, an entire generation of wars, Korea and Vietnam, and the Gulf, and a dozen smaller conflicts, sits inside that sentence like a stone. 60 years of women serving, of women in danger, of women doing the thing that needed to be done in the moment that demanded it, and then returning to roles that did not officially include combat, which meant that what they had done could not officially be recognized as what it was. Hester wore her uniform to the ceremony. She stood straight. The general pinned the medal to her chest. Photographers took pictures. In the pictures, she looks like a soldier, not like a symbol, not like a news story, like a soldier who went toward the thing everyone else was moving away from, and stayed there until the work was done. See, in the interviews that followed, she was careful. She talked about Staff Sergeant 9 more than she talked about herself. She talked about Specialist Mike. She used the word team the way other people use punctuation, constantly, naturally, as though the sentence does not quite make sense without it. She said the right things. She was gracious. She accepted the recognition without seeming to need it. But there was one thing she said that stayed with people who followed her story. A reporter asked her whether she thought receiving the Silver Star changed anything, whether it meant something, symbolically, for women in the military. She thought about it for a moment. She said she hoped it showed that women could handle whatever was asked of them. She did not say, "I told you so." She did not reach back into the past and find the range officer and hold him up to the light. She did not make what had happened on that road into an argument about what she had always been capable of. She just said, "I hope it shows we can handle it." She had already shown it. She had shown it with 25 minutes, and an empty rifle, and someone else's gun, and a ditch she walked into, when every reasonable voice in the world would have told her to walk away. She did not need words after that. The man at the range, the one who leaned over and said, quietly enough that he probably thought she couldn't hear, that she would miss, "He is not famous. He does not have a Wikipedia page. There is no citation with his name in it, no photograph with a general pinning something to his chest." History is not always fair about these things, but there is a kind of justice in what happened, quiet and unannounced, and entirely without drama. He made a prediction. He said, "She'll miss." She didn't. She didn't miss at the qualification range. She didn't miss in the ditch south of Salman Pak. She didn't miss in the record books, where her name now sits with the names of soldiers who did the thing that needed to be done in the moment that required it, regardless of what anyone expected from them. His prediction was about the world as he imagined it, a world organized according to his assumptions, in which she was one thing and he was another, and the gap between them was permanent and obvious and beyond dispute. The shot was about the world as it actually was. One of those two things is still true. Said. Leigh Ann Hester continued to serve. She was promoted. She trained other soldiers. She lived the kind of life that does not generate headlines. The daily, careful, unglamorous life of a professional soldier who has already proved what she needed to prove and now simply does the work. She returned to Kentucky, eventually. The air still smelled like cut grass and diesel fuel. She had the Silver Star. She had the memory of a Sunday morning in March, when the world became noise, and she moved toward it instead of away. She had the knowledge of what she was capable of when it mattered, which is a thing that no one can take away from you once you have found it. She had a story that begins with a smirk and ends with a medal, but that is not really what the story is about. The story is about a woman who already knew what she could do. She was just waiting for the moment to show everyone else.